green bow, yellow bow, green bow.
Well, that was a
All right,
weird
are we
start to the
recording?
recording. We're recording now, so
Yeah.
I don't even know what that meant. Not in
Okay.
context, but anyway. So yeah,
Okay, so
Schalk's going to
Mhm.
start with an elevator pitch. Maybe I'll add something, and then Kyle will lead with some questions.
Yeah. So I would say the elevator pitch for Foundry is that if you look at the really, really large and valuable organizations that exist in the world today, let's take Google as an example. Google is a massive juggernaut, many hundreds of billions of dollars worth. Google, for its first 7 years before it listed its IPO, they had an investment of about $25 million. On the first day of their IPO, they when they listed on the exchanges, they raised about I think it was 1.6 billion US in cash, and their valuation was 40 billion, like at the close of that day, right? So so outside of the financial jumps, I mean, Google itself really has been delivering that level of value. So they've really like changed the physical world. I mean, they've organized information for us in such a way that they can really like save a lot of time. Now, thing is, essentially, the only people who were allowed to invest in Google during that first period were essentially US, what are called US qualified investors. So basically, people who have a certain net worth, who can prove that they know how to invest, essentially. Pretty much everyone else was excluded from that initial amount. Now, I mean, if you go do the math, that's about 1,000xing in terms of the money that those people put in and the money that and the actual like benefit that they could reap from that. Now, on the one hand, I mean, you can sort of understand perhaps the impulse to protect people from general investment schemes, but at the same time, it's very obvious that what this has now become is a walled garden. So in other words, at least in the US, you don't get to climb in at the $25 million floor. You get to climb in once the thing has already gone to $4 billion. By that stage, you'll still make gains, but they're a lot lower than they are now. So Foundry, in essence, is similar to, it was Sequoia Capital who sort of led the charge to get investors into early stage Google. So you can think of this as sort of like a decentralized venture capital fund, right? So in other words, the capacity, but what we also want to accomplish is we want to give anyone the capacity to enter, into the fund pretty much at any stage going forward. And we want anyone to be able to apply for funding from the fund. So in other words, where with the Google example, you only had US capital, hunting US-based talent. Foundry's situation would be that it is international funds hunting international talent, right? So it's completely non-discriminatory about where exactly it might find value to invest in, and it's completely non-discriminatory about who might be allowed to invest. Now, ironically, due to the same rules that only allowed existing rich Americans to invest in Google, we've had to exclude the US citizens. So I do want to say that ironically, we've had to exclude the most excluded poor group, which is the average US citizen. That's kind of like very basically the elevator pitch. And and Foundry has a few other very nice features about it. Like the one thing is it's what's called a DAO, a distributed autonomous organization. And what makes it autonomous versus a normal organization is you can think of it as sort of like having a bank account that will never ever be closed down, and having a company secretary that will always be around to execute instructions from its token holders. Right. So in that sense, it is actually a fairly creative and new beast. There are other DAOs out there. I mean, we're one of several DAOs. Hopefully we become, like a pretty significant player, or rather it becomes a pretty significant player of which we are participants. But this thing gives it some very interesting features going forward. It might really be able to fund things in environments that are completely antagonistic, to the concepts of progress and making money. Because of the features of always having a treasury that'll execute the wishes of the token holders. And if we assume that the token holders are self-interested and rational, then we might be reasonably able to assume that Foundry going forward will continue to invest in ventures that hopefully make it money. Yeah. That was a long elevator ride.
That was a
That's
very
okay.
long, that was at least 44s of, and I think somebody got on and they thought they weren't going down, but they went up. So they had to go back, they had to do the whole round trip. But, and I just want to add to that. I think the pseudonymity is a big part of it. So anyone who is participating in Foundry can be pseudonymous, which for those who don't know, that word just means well, I think it's Latin, but it means a name other than your own name or a fake name. But it just means that I can interact in Foundry as a Freiholder without anyone knowing that I'm Logan. They just see an account online, and there's no way to connect that to me. And that, of course, is a characteristic of all cryptocurrency. But being pseudonymous and a Freiholder allows you to then, well, it allows Foundry to act in ways that are quite a bit more boldly, more bold in the face of antagonistic regimes or jurisdictions. So we talked a while ago about the Zimdai paper, which we have links to, which is basically a plan for how to bootstrap something of a financial revolution in Zimbabwe by sort of bootstrapping DAI adoption or any stablecoin adoption in Zimbabwe, which would be especially helpful right now. So now that plan doesn't have a clear profit model, but if it did, Foundry could target that and go after it and not really care that the Zimbabwean government would get pissed off, which is, I think, going to be increasingly powerful, especially as our traditional systems of power kind of fall down around us. So that's what I would add to it.
I just very quickly on the nature of what it is legally. This is also going to be very, very interesting because it might be some form of a unlimited liability partnership, which means that the partners who are identifiable might be held liable for
Partners
the actions of the DAO.
Yep.
Yeah, being the token holders basically. But at the same time, we don't really expect it to do anything that would really garner very negative legal attention necessarily. We don't think that it's going to be, funding attack drones. We think it's going to probably be funding DeFi projects, if we had to venture a guess. But what does make it interesting is if there is any such pressure, then what happens automatically is because the token holders can very easily pseudonymize themselves. We suspect that, and the way that we're building it also means that we really don't need the participation of all token holders. We just need some participation. It could lead to a situation where essentially the thing is run by a bunch of anonymous actors, and we really don't know who's behind it at all anymore.
Well, we would see the reputation. They would have usernames and they would have, so we would in some sense know who they are, but they wouldn't know what physical body they were connected to, what country they're in, and nobody would know that. But yeah.
On the internet, no one knows you're a dog.
All right.
Right.
Yeah. So what you think? Any questions?
Yeah. I took some notes. Let me read through those real quick. So yeah, when you were talking about like the traditional investment plan, specifically with Google, how that type of restriction they have is good in some ways, where there's not going to be big investment schemes where an organization with a really good idea is just going to take a whole bunch of money from investors and then disappear with all that money and not come back. Would Foundry offer any type of protection for investors from that exact same thing happening?
Okay, so so basically so just to give you a quick idea of what how the stuff works in Foundry, right? So at the moment, whilst we're still building out the entire governance mechanism, there is the situation that Foundry can, well, theoretically, the members of Team Toast can spend the money and run off it, right? But that's going to be a very small window of time. Once everything is up and running, essentially Foundry will be...
Specifically, that's governance. We can talk about that later, but just so it's in your head, once governance is built. So that's...
So once governance is built, which we don't see as being that far down the line, Essentially what we'll have then is we will have a situation where it's a completely member managed organization. So in other words, only the members they vote on the actual execution of items. So in other words, if you put money into Foundry, then you have a lot of levers of control. You have a non-perfunctory vote. So in other words, your vote does actually count. It is actually that vote that gets executed. And on top of that, we also have a system called, well, the system that we're implementing is called liquid democracy. And what happens with liquid democracy is even if you're a small holder, but you have good reputation and you can make a decent argument, then other holders can delegate to you and you get to vote with their voting power.
It's
so,
like an optional representative. So it's optionally a representative democracy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, or you could just basically say that, listen here, you like the idea of Foundry, but you really don't like the idea of finding out what Foundry is up to. And it looks like Logan here might be doing a good job in that regard. So you could just join the governance and delegate your votes to Logan, and Logan would then basically vote going forward. So that's the primary thing of, it's still possible that Foundry, makes bad decisions and loses everyone's money, but that again, then that is a member managed result. That is not a management. That is not a flaw of management.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and just to be clear, Foundry is one of these. It's one Google. It's not exactly. Maybe it could, but it's not really about making many investment opportunities. You could sort of say ICOs, that phenomenon in general, which no one is controlling. That's just a thing you can do on Ethereum. It stands for initial coin offering. That's what is sort of breaking these boundaries of traditional investment. So that's what allows anyone to invest in anything. The whole ICO bubble, actually, just to add some context, their ICOs got really popular for quite a long time, and they're still being used. But there was definitely a big pump and then a lot of shit that got funded that shouldn't have gotten funded. So that's definitely a phenomenon. But I think the libertarian argument would be that, well, that's just what's going to happen, and people will slowly learn how to choose good projects and be more suspicious of different things. Yeah. But yeah, just to summarize, so like right now we could run away with the money. I think you can make a pretty strong argument that, even ethics aside, our reputation and how long we've worked on this stuff, it actually wouldn't even make sense. It just makes more sense for us to actually build the thing.
Yeah.
And we'd actually even just make more money just from a strictly factionalist perspective. Okay. But yeah, and then when we build governance, it's not even really a concern because we won't hold any special role anyway. We'll just have a particularly large amount of tokens, but not even a controlling majority. So, and then someone, if they want to sort of copy what we did, once we've built governance, they won't have to rebuild that. So somebody can go and do another Foundry type thing, and they won't even have to have this awkward first period where they have to trust the founders. And that's sort of the whole idea of a DAO, is that there's no one in control, no particular special parties in control that you have to trust. I should say that's the ideal DAO.
Okay. So I may have misunderstood kind of exactly what Foundry was. When you were talking about it, from what I understood, it was a way for people to, Foundry was almost like a tool to use for me if I had a project that wanted funding, to sign up through Foundry, and then people could invest in my organization through Foundry and then have a little bit of control with my project going forward. Is that a super condensed version of what Foundry is going to offer?
So, sort of. If you're a contractor, well, let's say you want to build something in general. Let's forget about whether you're an organization or not. You can be an organization or an individual.
Yep.
If you want to do something and you think that will make Foundry money, you can basically propose this to Foundry. What you'd actually be doing is you'd be first going to the forum and talking to people who hold Fry, and you'd post your idea there without even interacting with Ethereum at all. So maybe you don't even have crypto, and you say, look, I think this needs to be done, and you're going to probably make that decision based on what you see Foundry's values as. But if you can convince Foundry, meaning basically the Fry holders, that your project will make money and it just needs some funding or some help from Foundry, or for that matter, you need to somehow maybe hook up into Foundry, because Foundry will be sort of running a bunch of other smart contract systems potentially. then the FRI holders could sort of take that proposal, put it into Foundry itself, into governance, and vote yes on that. And then you'd be paid as a contractor. So that's definitely something you could do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess also that I guess I'm still a little confused as to what exactly Foundry does. It's trying to establish like an easier form of currency. Correct?
No.
That would be
No.
that would be ZimDai. Let me
Okay.
try to take this one. So, and I actually didn't quite like your elevator pitch, Schalk, because I think it still doesn't answer the question of what Foundry's purpose is. What is Foundry really trying to do? And I think it's about building tools to increase financial freedom, and building things in general that will last. So I think I've talked to you, Kyle, about Die Hard. That was sort of what we were working on before.
It sounds familiar, but I can't remember exactly.
Well, I'll re-explain it anyway for the audience. Die Hard is essentially it's all run on smart contracts, so it can't be shut down. And it's a gateway into and out of cryptocurrency from some local government currency like the US dollar or the Rand in South Africa or whatever. So that's something that we built, and it itself can't be killed or shut down. So that's great. But for it to be marketed and iterated with user feedback, for us to do that as Team Toast, that's just me, Schalk, and a couple of other people, we would be putting a target on our backs, because what we've built is essentially a way around KYC. It really is stepping over a lot of the sacred lines of government currency control. If I can just state it aggressively, it's really an unhealable hole in currency control. That's really what it's supposed to be anyway. And so Foundry is really a way that you can. Foundry is an entity that could see this as a profitable opportunity and pursue that profitable opportunity using the intelligence of the FRI holders, without feeling the pressure of government saying like, no, that makes us mad.
Okay. So it sounds, when you put it that way, and this might be too aggressive, like an aggressive way to state it as well, a good way to just avoid taxes. It
could also do that, but I would almost say that's but that's not even the most interesting piece of it, but yeah.
Okay.
It itself can't be taxed. Go ahead, Schalk.
Yeah, if I can just say something there, right? So the idea is that Foundry, all it really is at its core is it's a wallet with some money in it, and it's a mechanism for finding out what token holders think should be done with the money. Now, there is no mechanism, there is nothing in there that if any revenue service comes to the Foundry and says, oh, but wait a minute, you showed a profit, you've got to pay us. There's no mechanism outside of getting the consent of the token holders, right, to actually pay the taxes out. Now, that doesn't exempt the token holders from taxes, because they might still be, they probably are still liable for, the valuation of their tokens. They are still liable for all kinds of other things. But if they're pseudonymous, that does make the situation a lot harder, right? And what's also interesting is that because Foundry can't be directly taxed, it might actually show like considerable greater returns, because as a company, it gets to compound the returns it makes on investments before those investments necessarily get paid out again to its investors.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, I think we sort of touched on this, but I just want to weave it back in right here. So what Schalk said about this is an entity that tax just can't find purchase on. So that's one sort of competitive advantage it has. And the other competitive advantage is that there are a class of entrepreneurship endeavors that are available out there, but which people don't pursue because they're afraid of government pressure and being sued or whatever. And so that whole class of things that are profitable, but governments don't like them, that is also sort of, it can explore that possibility as well. We also expect it to not really do things that are unethical, just because that would be unpopular with the real people that hold the FRI token. But we still think that space is quite big. If you take the space of things that are profitable, governments don't like them, but they're still ethical, that's a large space to explore.
Okay. Okay. That all makes a lot of sense.
We're being too clear, Logan. There are no questions.
Dang it. We got to get 30. We got to
Yeah.
make this more confusing. We got 30 more minutes or so. Well, was there anything that stuck out at you as, I don't know, everything we talked about as confusing or exciting, or, you know, just what comes to mind?
Yeah, it is a lot to wrap your head around for sure. So if I can boil it down even a little bit more simply and just say Foundry is a transaction service at its simplest form, do you think that would be mostly correct?
I would say mechanically, maybe what you're trying to say is that it's a transaction manager.
Okay.
Where you could almost call it like, you know, there's cryptocurrency wallets, then there's smart wallets where maybe I have a wallet, but I can only spend $50 a day. So that's a simple example of a rule where it's my money, but there's some rules. And then there's a multi-sig, if you go one level up, where the three of us might be in a 2 of 3 multi-sig, where if any two of us approve some action, the action is done, but it is still a single address on Ethereum. So we would all share this identity, this wallet. And so then Foundry or any DAO is just one level up, where now you still have a wallet and it can still do things. It can really do anything on Ethereum that a regular account can do, which not only includes sending money, it also includes trading currencies for other currencies, or even setting up an ENS domain, which is like, you have .com domains, there's .eth domains, but that's a whole separate thing. Any of those actions can be taken by any of these wallets. And the only thing a DAO does is it sort of expands the multi-sig idea, where we would each have one vote, to a token holder. You can almost say like a multi-sig, but the votes count not by how many individuals said yes, but how much Fry said yes. And so if I have 30% of Fry and you have 30% of Fry, we could pass anything we wanted, for example.
Okay.
Depending on how we set up the rules.
Gotcha. And this would essentially, so I think I'm getting it more completely now. If you and I wanted to go in on an investment, and could we cap a wallet and say we only want this much money in it?
Yeah, we could. I mean, that would just be another smart contract wallet.
Okay, like if I wanted to work at something with $100 to spare, but I wanted to maintain control, I could put $51 in and say, I'm looking for $49 to, complete this.
Yeah.
And then someone else could say, yeah, absolutely. And they're going to throw $49 at me. So I'll maintain, total control of it. They can still have a say, but I have majority. So I can, pretty much pull whatever lever, push whatever button I want to. But if that money then does turn a profit, and I turn that $100 into $200, all of a sudden now I have $102. Someone else has $98.
Yeah.
Does that pretty much?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. And so that, I would say what you've described is pretty much the general class of every DAO out there.
Okay.
And you can make the rules whatever you want. So in fact, you could even make a DAO, and this would be getting away from the idealized DAO, but you could make a DAO where you have veto control. So you can say, look, let's all raise money together. I'm going to maintain veto control because I think I have the vision, whatever. And people could still put money in, people could still vote. Maybe you never even touch the project, or maybe you veto here and there. That would also be, let's say, a less decentralized autonomous organization, an LDAO.
Okay.
But yep, that's that's
okay. Perfect. So what would make Foundry, I mean, I know that you guys are based in cryptocurrency, specifically Ethereum, right? Is that pretty much the only major difference, or are there other differences that will differentiate you from other DAOs even more?
I would say there's two main differences, and Schalk, maybe you can add to this. The first difference is the liquid. Well, actually, let me back up a little bit. All DAOs of any note are currently on Ethereum. You could sort of argue that any cryptocurrency is a kind of DAO. That's a bit of a stretch. So let's leave that for the moment. When we talk about DAOs, we typically are talking about things that are on Ethereum. That might change in the future, especially lately. Ethereum has been having some growing pains, but we won't get into that. For now, there's so much of a network effect of all these other systems built on Ethereum that any smart contract system at all, including DAOs, is built on Ethereum. So that's just one thing. what makes Foundry different from other DAOs is, I think, first of all, we're going to be doing liquid democracy, which no one has really done yet. So the fact that you could, as a fry holder, gain a reputation for wise decision making, and now you have your voting power is as if you had, 20% of the votes, even though you only have 1%. No one's done that yet. So that's one thing. And then I think the other thing that I'm becoming more and more aware of is that I don't know of any other DAO that is so boldly centered around, let's say, resiliency against government pressure. I think that's a big deal. And now that doesn't really change, it changes some of how we design the DAO, but I would say more importantly, it changes what kinds of people will be attracted and who will buy Fry. And the people who hold Fry actually determines the personality of Foundry, because Foundry is making decisions based completely on what the Fry holders vote for. So as we sort of build this personality, the people that come and want to join this group, they will, that
it'll attract a specific kind of people. You don't even really know who that specific type of person is,
right?
But it will almost automatically begin to cater towards a specific personality type of investor.
And we can sort of impact that by marketing to certain people or by having mission statements. You could actually so we have a product called Smoke Signal that lets you write uncensorable messages onto Ethereum. Nobody can delete them. But because it's all smart contracts, Foundry can actually vote to say something on Smoke Signal. And so you could actually vote to express something. So Foundry could vote to say, like, look, we've decided we're not going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to try not to fund these projects, we're going to focus on this, whatever. And that would actually, even though it's just words, people will know the history is that Foundry did vote to say this thing that was an expression. And that will actually further, you could almost say, constrain the personality. In the same way that if I say, like, look, guys, I'm going to stop drinking coffee. That's for sure. And now that I've said that, and you guys know that, that's actually going to constrain me. It's going to be harder for me to break that in the future because I did sort of publicly say it, and I care about my reputation, which Foundry will also care about its reputation.
Okay. Do you think, would you be opposed, and I guess you might not even be able to control this, would you guys be opposed to the pseudonymity, I might not be saying that entirely correct, but people essentially working on Foundry with a pseudonym, or kind of counteracting that? I mean, I know that I could sign up with a pseudonym that just says Kyle Brutsche, and everyone would be, oh, that's Kyle Brutsche. Do you think there would also be an issue with people doing the inverse of that? I mean, there's plenty of satirical Donald Trump Twitter accounts and satirical Google accounts and all that kind of stuff. Would you have an option to almost verify someone if they were to say, I am Kyle Brutsche, and I can prove it to you by showing you a copy of my ID or something like that, so that my pseudonym would be I would almost already come in preloaded with my reputation that I've built personally over the course of my life.
Yeah, you could do that. So all of that's open. I want to actually show you, I'll answer your question partially, and then I actually want to show you Smoke Signal because I think it actually demonstrates this.
Okay.
But first of all, it won't be like Twitter where when you verify an account, there's a team that verifies. Because if we were to build that team, now that's a centralized component that is susceptible to all kinds of pressure.
I would assume it would be something like a Reddit AMA where someone posts a picture with them, exactly. This is my username. It's obviously a picture of me, and there's like a timestamp and a date and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you would aim to convince the community. Okay. You wouldn't get a badge or anything because who's going to administer the badge? But if you're interested in just proving that you're who you say you are, and that could be a real world identity, or it could be a pseudonym that you did work for some other project. However you want to prove that, however you can, that's of course open, and that's fine with us. We suspect that with time, the people who will remain in Foundry are the people who can't be pressured. So that could be due to pseudonymity, or it could be due to they're just in a really good position, and that they're just an early, no one can really add pressure to them. And then on whether you let me just open this and I'll share my screen in a second. So you actually don't even really start with a name. All you'll have is an address. And I just want to share screen. So with smoke signal, for example, I go and click on any one of these. So this guy has no username at all. He has an address here, and then we can, what I've done is we can generate a face from this address. So you can see these little faces or whatever. I'm really happy with my little faces I made, even though they look a little silly. But that comes from your address, and the address is your pseudonym. So you never even really have to explicitly make the choice. Do you want to be Kyle Brutsche? Do you want to be somebody else? And because that is the context of the communication, then everybody knows to, if you say you're Elon Musk, they're not typically just going to believe you because they understand that everybody has a pseudonym. And there's no moderation, there's no censorship. So really, be suspicious and yeah. But you will be able to see how much fry they have, which is interesting. So imagine something like this where people are talking, but as well as all this other information, there's a thing here that says like, oh, this guy owns 5,000 fry. And you know that there's, for the sake of this example, 100,000 fry. So you say, oh, that's 5% of the vote. So this guy, when he says, if you come as a contractor and you say, I want to build XYZ, and you get 20 yeses and 1 no, but the 1 no is like a huge big guy, then you actually, that really means quite a bit to you, or vice versa, of course.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's see, what other questions I have for this. What do you think is going to be the biggest kind of danger, or what do you think could go? What do you think could most easily go terribly wrong with Foundry in its development?
Oh, it could garner no interest. That, in my view, is that's probably the worst thing that could happen. I think we're going to do okay in terms of the interest. I do think that there's like an unknown minimum level of interest. I think that you need to actually launch a thing like this. Where you have a minimum amount of money to sort of make it interesting.
And if it goes to vote as well, you want a sort of a healthy network of fry holders.
Yeah, I think another very, this is not so much something going wrong, I think it's something going right, is that if you have a thing like Foundry with such limited accountability, I think one of the most dangerous things that could happen is it just trucks along happily and builds value. Because if you have such a large institution where that is the case, that's going to really like step on a whole bunch of narratives about how self-interest and profit-seeking are fundamentally evil things. I strongly suspect that that's all that will happen. I think we'll have a bunch of these DAOs, and they'll just be pursuing very straightforward endeavors that maybe not very straightforward, maybe very interesting endeavors, but in most cases, like business plans where, oh, okay, well, we want to deliver value in this way. We need some funds to do it, and this is how we're going to remunerate the people who gave us the funds. I think in the majority of the cases, that's what's going to happen. I think that's one of the things that's sort of like dangerous to the established order. Is this whole idea of like if we leave people to actually gain wealth, and to labor for themselves and others, that somehow through some magical process, that turns them into evil monsters that want to eat babies.
Yeah, and I'll add, I like these challenging questions. So another thing that could go wrong is we still have to build governance. Governance is, we can talk about that a bit in detail, but it's basically the process that takes votes and proposals and turns them into an executed Ethereum transaction. But we still have to build that. So that could be something that could go wrong, especially because we're also planning to build liquid democracy. We have I think, a pretty good design, which we have the white paper for. People can find that on our webpage, which talks specifically about how we would build this. But that could take so long that well, I guess either we lose interest, maybe, I or Schalk just like, it's too much, we got to move on, or maybe somebody else beats us to it. Although an interesting thing in cryptocurrency is that there's it's an environment that really encourages coordination. So if somebody actually wants to beat us to it, they're probably find it's better off just to work with us. We might have to sort of share tokens and things like that, but yeah, I would say that's a danger. And then a related danger is that we do build it and there's some fatal flaw, some bug that people don't realize, and then all the money's at risk. We're mitigating that to some degree by building small, we call it the piecewise development, where we're trying to build small pieces and okay, that works. Okay, let's build another small piece, and we kind of hook them together temporarily. And then eventually we have a few pieces that are working together and we start cementing the relationship between them. Yep. So I build this piece and then this piece and connect them, and we can move that connection as we upgrade them. And eventually we actually remove our own ability to even change the relationship.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Or another case, or another example is we have a minting key, which means we have a multi-sig, and if our multi-sig votes to use the minting key, we can just create money out of thin air. But we need that right now because it's going to be used in various governance processes, but eventually we will burn that too. So we're going to, as we build more of this, we're sort of successfully removing ourselves from the essential operations until, one day we'll look around at the system and say, look, this thing does drive itself. And then we burn our own keys and cement all those relationships. So so there could be a bug, but that's how we're going to try to mitigate that possibility. And you could do that. Another way you could do that is you could have a multi-sig type thing between our multi-sig and some alpha version of governance. And so then we could sort of see how the governance works with all the FRI voters while still not letting go of control completely. Similar to like giving a teenager allowance. You don't want to give them your whole bank account. Right. You can give them an allowance and sort of see how they work, which also is sort of a crucial part of learning how to handle money. And so, and Foundry will really learn. It'll learn about itself. What sorts of things is it likely to vote in? Is it likely to make some kind of particularly stupid decision again and again? And how does it sort of, build the mental processes to not do that? So, that'll be. I'm really excited to get to that point. We're just more focused on marketing and fundraising right now. But yeah, we should start building that relatively soon.
Okay. If I were to put money into Foundry, could I liquidize that in the future and just take it right back out day 2?
Yes. So right now, you probably heard Schalk use the term DeFi. Have you heard this? DEFI?
No. Other than the traditional sense. Yeah.
What is the traditional sense?
Like to defy something.
Oh, DeFi.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it does have quite a defiant nature to it. So it stands for decentralized finance.
Okay.
And it's just this whole system that's growing quite explosively and organically. It's actually really exciting, where you can, first of all, you can trade crypto for any crypto, which you've been able to do that for a while with different systems, but they've started to connect in really interesting ways. You can have savings accounts with cryptos. You can provide liquidity where if you have token A and token B and people are going to want to trade them, you can put it out on the system. You can make fees when people trade, and you still own the crypto you put out there. So this has been building on itself a lot. And so when we launched our token sale, somebody that was not even part of our team, and this gets back to like the coordination idea I was saying earlier, somebody took our token and took some ether, made a liquidity pool on, I think Uniswap, which is one of these systems. And without us even having to do anything, made this market. So now back to your question, if you were to buy FRI through the sale or through this Uniswap thing, you could go back to Uniswap and sell FRI for whatever the price point is there. And that's something we didn't particularly condone. We actually don't want to do it ourselves because we don't want to be accused of selling to Americans, because then the SEC might get mad at us. But that system is completely decentralized and out of our control, and you can use that to get in and out. And in fact, it might even be better at some places to go in through that rather than our sale. We are not officially condoning that.
Gotcha. So if I have, just to make sure I understand it, if I have investments in two different sections of Foundry, and I know people are going to want to buy into that, I can put both of those up. And when they do trade my goods back and forth, I'll make a little bit of profit from that.
Not quite. Well, sort of, except that I probably wasn't clear. If you zoom out of Foundry, I'm really talking. So Foundry has a token, and if you go start your own project, that project would have its own token separate from Foundry.
Okay.
And you could take those two tokens and trade them between each other.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Foundry could also create its own tokens and do that, but the DeFi stuff, there's anybody can make a token, and then anybody can take any two tokens and trade them on the Uniswap or any of these other liquidity pools. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I do want to answer your question, because there is a scenario in which you can't liquidate your FRI. So if you are participating in governance, and we're still working through the details of this, but basically, if you're in the governance mechanism, first of all, you actually make a bit more money. Part of the thing we're using the minting key is to reward people who are participating in governance. So if you just put your money in governance, you're getting a little bit extra. Your wallet is slowly growing, but you're also it takes, I don't know if we even have a time yet, it may be a week, maybe some months, but we have to nail this value down. You have to sort of signal that you want to exit, and then you have to wait that long to exit, and that basically ensures that well, the reason we're doing that is so that when you vote, you are voting in a manner that
way.
Sorry?
In like a committed way. You're not
Yeah,
voting
because you know that
with the intent to leave tomorrow.
Exactly. So you're gonna, if you're a coldly rational actor, which I think is roughly accurate, although not completely, then you're gonna think, okay, well, when I leave in, let's say, a week, what is the token price gonna be? And that's gonna inform your decision today. So it's gonna tend to make you prefer longer term benefit over short-term benefit. So that's the case in which you wouldn't be able to liquidate.
Gotcha.
Anything to add to that, Schalk?
Well, yeah. So the thing is essentially that what Foundry does do is, when you participate through the sale mechanism, it does trap your money, right? It gives you FRI, which you're then welcome to go resell again, right? So, but there's no exit mechanism for the money inside of the pool. The money inside of the pool is now basically under the under the control of the Foundry governance.
Right. So your money you literally put in, you can't get back out.
Right. But I could sell my control over.
Yep. Yeah, you can sell your tokens, and whatever price you put in to get that tokens, whether you did it through the sale, well, I guess that's the scenario we're talking about. That is going to be very close to the Uniswap price, because if there's any difference, people can make money by arbitrating and actually rebalancing that. Anybody can do that.
Okay.
So even though you won't get your DAI back out, DAI being the stable coin. I don't know if have we told you about DAI? I'm not sure.
I think you've talked to me about it, but
yeah, just one DAI is always $1 US. It's a whole decentralized system, part of DeFi actually. But yeah, you can still get you can get some kind of crypto back out. You can change that to DAI. It'd be roughly equal to what you put in, unless the price has changed. I mean, and if you wait a week or a month or a year, the price almost definitely will have changed. If we failed, it will have dropped quite a bit. And if things continue to improve and we get more and more interest and we start building, then it will have gone up. And also, once governance is live, of course, anything that Foundry owns that's making a profit, that money goes back into the treasury, which also will sort of indirectly bump up the price of your FRI token. And I'll just actually go into that just to sort of connect all that. The way that Foundry, the reason FRI holders want to vote at all is because you would vote on something that would actually make money and send it directly back to the treasury where all the other money is. And so that brings money back to the pile that you all jointly share. And that's sort of the way the profit mechanism works. And I think that's actually another thing that makes Foundry a little unique. There are DAOs that accept investments and they vote functionally. That system works to spend the money in this or that way, but they almost feel more like grants or research projects. I don't think any DAO really makes most of their money through profitable projects. It seems like it's more usually about kind of pooling money to further some cause. Do you think that's right, Schalk, or am I missing something?
Well, I mean, there are things
Maybe
like
Maker could be.
Well, Metacartel's venture model is the idea that they want to build DAOs for profit. So I'm not really sure how exactly they intend on distributing those profits yet, but I don't see it as an insurmountable obstacle for them. They do have like completely different qualities from us, though. I mean, one of the things there is that most of the people are known. They sort of work on reputation. You can kick people in, people can rage quit and take a portion of their funds out. So so all of those things basically, I think, make them a different kind of a thing. But it does seem to me that the majority of what Metacartel has done up until now is sort of fund interesting projects, but they don't necessarily have a way to make the money back yet.
Right. Yeah, it's almost, yeah, mechanically they're the same. Mechanically, Foundry and them are, well, I'll say similar enough to where they both could fund profitable projects, but they don't quite seem to yet. They seem to fund things they'd like to see happen, but that aren't exactly profitable. Maker is an interesting difference, though. Maker is actually the underlying system behind DAI. So that's a system that provides the stable coin, and I don't know all the details. I don't want to get into all the details. I suspect Schalk knows. We're running out of time, though. But they somehow make money off the utility of DAI. So that there are DAOs out there. I really should be fair. Maker is a DAO that does, you could say, make money by providing value, which is what we'd like Foundry to do as well.
So just on that, basically, I mean, there are a couple. I mean, Maker's probably the biggest DAO that's making the most money in like a traditional sort of a sense of an organization that makes money through its actual activity. Like I'd say, Maker's arguably the only one that's really turning a really crazy profit now. Then you have Augur as well, which is the prediction market that once the volumes on that pick up, I'm pretty sure they'll be making a pretty handsome profit as well. But again, both of them are like fairly focused. Both of them have a very specific type of activity that
you can almost say one product, almost.
Yeah, they're basically tokens for a product. Yeah.
Whereas Foundry is tokens for a particular kind of project, and we're not really set into. I mean, we have you could say Foundry owns two products, Zimdai, or sorry, not Zimdai, Diehard, the exchange we're talking about, and then Smoke Signal. Both of those make a 1% profit, although Smoke Signals is a optional one. You can untick the donate box. And then that goes to Foundry, and that's all set up already. So Foundry has those, but maybe they never make profit, but Foundry could go build other things. And again, even though it could do anything profitable, the personality should be such that it focuses on things that sort of, I mean, the way I see it, things that guarantee a certain kind of financial freedom, privacy, the right to communicate, I mean, I just heard in Belarus, the government shut down the internet because,
there was a big election where someone who is very clear, most of the public does not want to won like 90 to 10% or something like that. He won with an 80% margin. And then the opposing running mate got taken into a building where the people that went with her were informed she left via another exit, and then she showed up in another country and said, yeah, I'm backing out of the election because my children exist and I love my children. And you're like, wow. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, so I was actually just looking up online, like, what do you do in that scenario? How do you rebuild the internet? And that is something that I would, how can I put this? As one of the parents of Foundry, that is a principle I'd like to instill in our young little Foundry. Like, that is an opportunity to go and be like, how about fuck you? How about we rebuild the internet and find a way to make money doing it, but not be afraid of, whatever pressure comes back your way, because maybe it's just Belarus, maybe there's some weird alliances with other governments. Who knows what pile of snakes lies in wait if a big player comes and tries to fix that problem. The Foundry could be like, I don't care, because you don't really know who we are, and we have money we can spend, and you can't shut us down. That's really, I would say, the spirit of Foundry that I that lights my eyes up and that I dream about.
Yeah. That reminds me of a joke about Robert Mugabe. So Robert Mugabe. Oh, are we out of time?
No, I was going to make sure Kyle knew who he was, but it sounds like you're going to explain.
You don't know who? So Robert Mugabe was the dictator of Zimbabwe, the liberator from, he liberated Zimbabwe when it was still Rhodesia, and then he became president. I think he murdered about 21,000 Ndebele people. He eventually kicked out all the white farmers from the country. He led his country into extreme hyperinflation. It was really like it was just one failure after another. But anyway, and he also had frequent elections that he won by a very comfortable margin. Anyway, so like the story goes, Robert Mugabe, Donald Trump, and the Pope are on a plane, right? And the engines blow out, the pilots exit, and the three of them discover there's only one parachute for the three of them, right? So anyway, so Donald Trump goes, I'm the leader of the free world, and and if the people lose me, there's going to be chaos, right? And that's why I should have it. And the Pope goes, well, I'm the leader of the world's biggest religious organization, and in these troubled times, people will want, they'll want spiritual guidance. And if I go, then it'll just throw the church into chaos. I need the parachute. And Robert Mugabe goes, well, guys, listen, both of those are incredibly good arguments. I've got a very small country. My interests are nothing at your scale, basically. But my people still need me. I feel that I need the parachute. But I tell you guys what. How about we vote on it? Anyway, so somehow they find a big hat there and everything, and they write their little votes on paper and they chuck it into the hat and they mix it up and everything. Anyway, Robert
got a lot of time on this plane that's crashing.
I know. This is actually like it's, but they really like it. I know two of these guys are from the government, but it really shook the efficiency out of them. But anyway, so they count the votes in the hat. Anyway, long story short, Robert Mugabe won 12-2.
Yeah.
Yep, it makes sense.
Yep.
No.
Okay, cool. Well, that sounds like a cool note to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kyle, for the interview. That was great.
If I could offer one other thing to end on, it's just my understanding of Foundry as it stands currently.
Yeah, please.
And then maybe do a couple quick corrections and end it there. So my understanding of Foundry at this point is it is a DAO, an investment, an organization in which people can invest. But the primary difference and kind of a burning light that will make Foundry stand out against the others is that if I want to invest, but I simply don't have the time to feel like I am going to handle my investments or my investment control as wisely as I should, I can assign that power to someone who I do trust, and they can make those decisions in my stead.
Yeah. Yep. And actually, let me add something really quick to that, which we didn't mention. Well, first, let me remind that anyone in here can be pseudonymous, which has the whole resiliency thing.
Yeah.
And also the whole point about liquid democracy is that person you delegate to can actually delegate to somebody else. I don't think we even explained that. But,
okay.
So there could be a whole pyramid of like, and that just to sort of make it practical or concrete, I could tell you about Foundry. Let's assume I'm not actually I'm not part of Team Toast. I'm just some guy. I'm like, hey, there's this project Foundry. Here, sign up here and delegate your vote to me. I'll handle it. And you know me, you trust me because I'm your friend. Well, in this case, I'm your brother, so you really trust me.
Yeah.
And then I go, well, okay, cool.
A lot of assumptions in there.
Yeah, let's not go into that right now. But so then, and maybe I have 3 or 4 people under me, and then I delegate to Schalk, who I've met on the forums. I don't know him personally, but he's always in the forums talking and whatever, and I like his thoughts. And then Schalk maybe then further delegates to one of a few people at the very top. And so that can, I don't
just
know if
there's a tree. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a tree. I think I don't know, did we ever figure out what the limit was on layers of that tree, by the way?
I think it's about, effectively, it'll be around 32, I suspect.
Yeah, but realistically, there probably won't be that deep. Realistically, it's probably just 2 or 3 or 4 hops. But yeah.
Is there, I guess, one other question? I know we're crunching on time, but would I be able to essentially delegate certain types of questions to someone else. If someone's asking a question about a specific type of thing, could I go, they just simply know more about this subject than I, but I trust them, I'm going to let them make that decision. And then could that person have a similar situation where something comes up and they're like, oh, well, I don't know much about that, but Kyle knows quite a bit about it, so I'll delegate that to Kyle. Is there a way to make that type of smart allocation?
One of the features of liquid democracy that I think we should have actually covered is that if somebody votes on something, right? So let's say, for instance, you've delegated it to Logan, right? Because you feel Logan is an expert in XYZ. Now some vote comes along and Logan votes badly. Now you have the option to actually shift your vote away from Logan and vote directly, or to shift it to someone else.
Okay.
Similarly, like if Logan
that actually affects the vote in progress, which is a cool thing. So you're trusting the representative, but you still have a veto option essentially.
Yeah. So you've now selected a representative in Logan, but since you can see that, okay, he's making a bad decision that I don't agree with here, you could get your representation with someone else. Something else that might happen as well is, like, let's say, for instance, Logan is an expert in DeFi and I'm an expert in autonomous drones, for instance. Then you could split your deposit and basically say, okay, well, I trust both Schalk and Logan, and then, at our level, we can sort of like debate through the proposals and their merits.
Yeah. Okay. And to add to that, I don't think so. I heard your question as like, is there a mechanism where you could sort of say class A of questions goes to this person, class B goes to this person automatically? Yeah. There's no way to do that automatically. However, there could be someone on the forum and they're like, look, all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at each vote and I'm going to pass it to the person who should be voting. Yeah. I'm going to change my delegation, and that could be his reputation he's building. He's really just an interpreter and a classifier, and you could put your votes behind him. So it's happening automatically to you. It's not, but it's just a person doing the decision making.
I could say, I trust this person to assign these votes their correct category. And in that category, assign it to the correct expert, essentially. Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I definitely understand Foundry much better than I did originally, because my knowledge of Foundry was very close to zero before. So
perfect. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could do another one sometime, but we'll talk about that off air. For now, we will sign off.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Yep. Thanks.
Yes. Thanks, Kyle. Pleasure meeting you.